Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 541.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because when it comes down to it, many of you, you know how I started. You know, squatting in bank-owned property. You know that my wife couldn't eat or drink. You know that I had punctured lung. Yeah, it was kind of difficult. But the point behind all of that is that no matter where you are, there's a way to move forward. And the question is to take what you have been given. How will you do that and move forward? And in fact, some of you, many of you, you have a job. You have, maybe you've already got the spouse in the house and the, white picket fence, and you feel kind of different, but yet the same, where you feel like you're stuck. You don't know exactly what you're going to do. And I would say you have the proverbial golden handcuffs. You're like, man, if I start over, I have to start at the bottom. I'm already earning enough. What am I going to do? That's right. That's why I can't do business. That's why I can't get into real estate. I've got all of these other responsibilities that are in my way. Well, I believe that today's guest is going to give you a different perspective on your current reality, which could, and if you're open to it, will absolutely inspire you to take those next steps, move forward, and make something happen, because action, ladies and gentlemen, is where it's at, and that's exactly what we are going to be talking about today. And who do I mean by we? I am, of course, talking about none other than Ryan Narus. Now, you may know him from his podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. And yes, he likes mobile home parks, which means he also likes cash flow, but he also likes keeping it real, because I know that a number of you have heard, oh my God, those things are cash cows. They're absolutely easy. I think Ryan might have some things to say about that. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to take some time, take some notes, and let's get ready to listen, love, and learn from Ryan Narus. Ryan, how you doing?
Jay, I'm excited to be here, and I just got to brag on you for a little bit because I gave you like 2 or 3 bullet points there, and you nailed it. Really impressive. I interview folks on my podcast, and what I love about your podcast is you interview so darn well. You make it easy, not to like set the bar really high and now the pressure's on, but I am super excited to be here and provide some value to your audience.
I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for the kind words as well. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I think you already know, but I got to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. You ready?
Ready.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like, yesterday's superheroes, anywhere from Black Widow, Hulk, Iron Man, etc. And that's because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, if you think about being an entrepreneur, at least for me, I can occasionally envision myself running around town using our products and services and saving customers one sale at a time. And yes, I feel like a superhero in those moments when those sales close. Also, though, if you think about a superhero, they have a beginning, just like an entrepreneur. For example, Spider-Man. There was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing. And then, one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and now is presented with a choice to use this newfound talent for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. But before the number of deals that you have done, the $10 million, the $8 million, all of those things, before your podcast, before even the job that you had before graduating, Wake Forest University. Shout out to North Carolina. I'm pretty happy about that. And all of those things. Before all of those things, what we want to know is, who is Ryan Narus?
Ryan Narus is just a kid who does not quit. Period.
Interesting. Okay.
I'll give you a good for example. I know this is kind of silly, but a few days ago, I just reached 700 days in a row on my Duolingo app. So I am a boring, vanilla Irish Catholic kid who just refuses to quit. I get what I want because I show up and do a little bit every single day. And it's been my dream to be able to speak Spanish fluently. And I said, you know what? I could go and spend a bunch of money on Rosetta Stone and go to all these classes, or I can have this little old free app called Duolingo, who are not paying me, by the way. This is bona fide word of mouth advertising. I said, you know what? 15 minutes a day on insane mode, 700 days in a row. I'm proud to report my broken Spanish. It's not the best, but as we would say, es bastante, which means it's enough, or funciona, which means it works.
Got it. Yeah. I speak
all down to one thing. It's I show up every single day and do a little bit every day.
And that's actually something I want to talk about in just a second. What I want to know, though, is where does that come from? Because, see, we're all given certain things. I'm going to assume, I'm suspecting that there was a reason that you learned to be that way, and I want to know where that came from.
You know, I wish I had a good answer for that. So I sat down with my father not long ago, a couple years ago, and I said, Dad, thank you. Thank you for giving me my education, for raising me in an environment where I had the ability to learn and get my education. You gave me everything I needed to succeed. Thank you. And to my surprise, my dad didn't say you are welcome. My dad said, in so many words, well, what do you want me to say here? I was like, that's a bizarre thing to say. Dad, why aren't you accepting of this compliment? Right. And he said, Ryan, I don't know what it was, but you were a relatively lazy kid. You didn't really care that much about school until you hit about 9th or 10th grade. And then for some reason you got home one day and you just said, I'm getting into Wake Forest University. And I didn't have to do anything but get out of your way after that. And ever since then, you just had this fire under you. And I can't take credit for that at all. And my brother, he basically used that to pivot and go, well, you should do the same thing for your brother. Whatever you did for yourself, go do for your brother. So, Jay, I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think I was extraordinarily lucky for where I was born and the genetics I was born with. And I can't say it's because my father sent me to Catholic school growing up, because my brother was there too. I can't say it was this, that, or the other thing, because my brother grew up in a very similar scenario. And my brother is very comfortable with corporate life and educated as well. Proud of him. But he just doesn't have the same fire that I do. And that's okay. I'm not saying that to pick on him. I just don't. I wish I had an answer for you, but I think for whatever reason, I just one day woke up with a chip on my shoulder, and no matter what I do, it won't go away, and I'm glad it's there.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with that, is that oftentimes there are events that happen to people in life, and the same events can happen to the same person, and yet two different people will respond completely differently. And that's the thing. That's the moment where something inside of you said enough, at least at that stage. And you're like, this is now where I'm going to head. Now, I am also curious, not just because, I mean, Chris Paul, Tim Duncan, Muggsy Bogues went there. I'm just curious, why did you choose Wake Forest? I mean, it's just one of those things. Like if my 11-year-old or 9-year-old came home today and said, all right, I'm going to this college, I'd be like, yo, how did you get to that decision? I mean, nothing against Wake Forest. I'm just curious as to how you figured that out so early.
Well, speaking of which, Al-Farouq Aminu is in the Western Conference Finals right now, and he was at Wake when I was there. So sorry to any Golden State fans right now. I got to pull for Portland because my guy's on the team. But then again, I'm a Charlotte guy, so I got to pull for Mr. Curry as well because his dad Dell was a Hornet for a long time. But that now that you say that, I kind of I think a good equivalent is if I had that charcoal there, all it needed was the spark, the match to get it lit. And if I had to pick one moment, it was probably my freshman year of high school, and I'll go way back. My father is actually a professor at Wake Forest University, and we lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for a long time before we moved to Charlotte, where Wake has a satellite campus now. And my dad used to take me to the game, so I actually grew up watching Tim Duncan. One of my first memories was cheering in the Joel Coliseum for Tim Duncan, and we also went to the Greensboro Coliseum too before they switched over to the Joel Coliseum. But I always grew up a Wake Forest fan because my dad was a professor there. And when I hit ninth grade, so this is before the SAT changed, it was based on a 1600 scale. I got a 1050 on my PSATs in ninth grade. And I think that was probably, if I had to pick one moment, what was the spark? Well, the charcoal was already there. But the spark was probably that I had dreamed of going to Wake Forest University my entire life. And the first time I took a practice SAT, my PSAT, I got a 1050. And the average SAT score for Wake Forest University at the time was 1320. So I wasn't even close.
No. But I like this. Keep going.
That was the moment. I went, I am staring down the barrel of not going to my dream school. Because I was on the campus all the time with my dad. I met a ton of professors when I was a kiddo, ran around the track on campus, and it was just my dream to go there. And in ninth grade, I guess it was probably my first biggest adversity that I ever felt in my life, where I went, oh my gosh, this is hopeless. I'm not even close.
Okay.
Flash forward a few years later. The good news is not only did I get accepted to Wake, I did score a 1320 on the real SAT, which was good enough with my good grades. I actually went back a second time, so loved it so much I went twice.
Yes, exactly. Now, here's something that I like is that the spark was lit from what some would say the potential or possibility or the realization of failure. You're like, oh, I got to actually do something. And yet some people will take that same, 1050 score and go, oh, well, I guess Wake Forest isn't for me, and make it and go somewhere else. But that's not what you did. And I have a feeling that same idea is something that you have continually done even since graduating. So let's talk about that. In fact, when you go from getting in, graduating, you're there. What was the journey that has led you from Wake Forest now to real estate? There's got to be a transition there somewhere.
So, great question, by the way. I was a psych major, and people call me little therapist, and your questions are the same questions I would ask, which I love that. I knew we would have some pretty good chemistry. So, at Wake Forest University, I decided I wanted to get into sales, so I was a psych major, stats minor.
Well, that's all you're going to do with a psych degree right now. I like it.
Yeah, I know. My mom, my mom loved to just trash me.
Yeah.
She was like, what are you going to do with that degree? You went to Wake Forest and you studied psych. And I'm like, you watch, Mom. I think she was smart enough to know that the chip on my shoulder, I don't like it when people tell me I can't do something.
Right.
I had the wonderful luck of graduating in 2009. Probably one of the worst times to graduate undergrad with a psych degree, and all the sales jobs wanted 5 years of experience and a Rolodex of names to call and be effective immediately. And I just remember going, someone's got to take a chance on me here. And it was the worst because I couldn't find a job, and it wasn't that I wasn't trying. It took me 9 months, and eventually my old karate instructor was like, well, why don't you come sell cars with me? And I said, you know what? If these knuckleheads want experience, I'm not going to sit here in my mom's basement feeling sorry for myself, working at Best Buy part-time. I'm going to go sell cars. I'm going to make the best of it, because if they want experience, it's not going to be from Best Buy. So I sold cars for 4 years, won a bunch of awards, sold 800 cars, a little over 800 cars in 4 years, and then wrote a book about it, about how to buy a car for the best price using psychology. And then in the midst of that, I realized I was stuck, because if I get hurt, like one day I was playing basketball and I sprained my ankle, and I realized money's not coming in while I'm at home with a pretty rough sprained ankle. So I literally went out to the store and I bought crutches, and I sold cars with crutches, because the money's not coming in if I'm at home with ice on my ankle. And I realized, probably if I had to pick a moment in that moment, that this was not sustainable. I can do that in my 20s, or I can recover quickly. But imagine something happens in my 40s, 50s, 60s, when my body fails me. And not only that, I looked up. I looked at the F&I manager, the guy who does your paperwork and tries to convince you to buy all these warranties. They were pretty miserable, made great money, but they were there all the time, never spent time with their families. The next step up wasn't much better at the sales desk. And then you have the general manager, who, forget about it. But it takes 20 years to get to be a general manager. And by then, yeah, you might be making $300K a year. But I asked my general manager point blank, what would you do differently? And he said, you know what? I might not do this because I never see my kids. And so what I realized throughout that experience was, not only was this not sustainable, yeah, it might be paying well, but it's not sustainable in the long run. I'm not going to, this is it. This is my life. But also that even if I get promoted all the way to the top, I'm still not going to have the lifestyle I want, because I'm going to be married to my job. I said, I work for Hendrick Honda. And I said, you know who is having the best time here? The guy whose name is on the side of the building. I said, this is America. I need to go own my own business. And through that process, I realized what I needed to do was I needed to learn and I needed to meet people. But before I did any of that, I needed to discover who I was. And this is the one part that I think people just skip over, because they think, oh, soft skills, oh, I know myself well. If you don't know who you are and what you like, you will quit, period. It's going to happen. Because for me, I didn't realize, this is going to be a silly example, Jay, but I love coffee.
Okay.
And I had no idea how much I liked coffee until I was about 28 years old.
Okay.
And I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but my wife, she looked at me confused one day and she went, why don't you drink coffee? You love porters and stouts and very bitter flavors. I bet you would like coffee. And within about 2 weeks, I was drinking my coffee, no cream, no sugar, no nothing, straight black.
Oh, wow.
Love it. Took me 28 years to discover that. I run into so many random, ridiculous hurdles as an entrepreneur that if I didn't discover my coffee, so to speak, in business, where I had no idea I loved it, I had to actively look for it. I have to truly understand who I am. Jay, I would have quit so many times by now.
Yeah.
I would have quit before my first deal.
Yeah. I get that 100%, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, it's definitely a thing when you are not clear. Clarity leads to power, the power to decide and act. And that lack of clarity creates confusion, where thereby any wind of teaching, anything that appears negative, will totally blow you off course. But I just got to make sure I heard something correct.
Sure.
Did you say that your karate instructor is selling cars? I just want to make sure, because you do. The first thing that went through my head was, is he Daniel LaRusso? But I'm like, I don't think so. but when you said that, I was like, no, that is too much on the nose. But in all seriousness, 800 cars in 4 years, that's kind of cool. No one likes the car buying experience, so thank you for writing the book. But most importantly, I think the thing that comes from all of that is the realization that even if you continue to become the best version of yourself, you were still going to end up in a situation where your time broke, for lack of a better way of putting it. So I have to ask this question. Being that your parents, or at least your father's professor, deeply entrenched in the educational system, You've not only went down the undergrad degree, but you also went down the MBA degree, all that stuff, all of this training and education and all of these things. And then one day you say, I want to do real estate. How does that conversation go with mom, parents, wife, that type of thing? Because I know for a number of people listening, that's probably right where they are and looking for a little inspiration to figure that one out. Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you, though, is where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do, get some of your time back, is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Glad you asked that, because when my dad got wind of it, the first thing out of his mouth was, well, that sounds like a scam.
Yes. Now we're talking. Game on.
It's a little better because when I explained it to my wife, she was like, hell to the no.
Yes. Love it.
My wife hated mobile home parks for the longest time. So real quick, so back in the car, I gotta answer this question. I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the 4-Hour Workweek both changed my life. That's how I found real estate.
Got it.
And how I understood time value of money. Not from a financial standpoint, but from a lifestyle standpoint, was a 4-Hour Workweek. So those two books completely changed my life. And flash forward to while I'm getting my MBA, my dad's thrilled because he is an MBA professor. My wife's thrilled because she wants stable, good income and me to be at home and me to leave at 5 o'clock so I can be at home with the kids, so to speak, and a stable income. And for me to come home, I had my MBA internship with Carnival Cruise Lines in Miami. And I bumped into a childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and we both just realized how much we were determined and how much we hated corporate America and how many books we read. We would be perfect business partners. What are we going to do? And Ian is his name. Ian said, well, what about mobile home parks? And I said, well, if it's anything like the show Trailer Park Boys on Netflix, sign me up, because that show's hysterical. So that's how I found mobile home parks. But anyway, imagine this. I get home. My wife had spent the summer in Winston-Salem working on her job while I'm in my MBA internship by myself down in lovely Miami, Florida, having the time of my life. And then I get back and I'm like, oh, hey, great news. We're going to buy mobile home parks. So she actually gave me a ton of resistance. And by the way, anybody who is listening, who is getting resistance from your spouse or significant other, I brought my wife on my podcast and I said, you can say whatever you want. 2 rules: no bad words, no industry secrets. Don't give away any of my secrets. And then you can say whatever you want. And Jay, she roasted me.
Nice.
For about 10 minutes, but then we had a wonderful conversation. So anyone who's listening, whose significant others are not bought into the idea, give that a listen, because they are not alone. My wife has a lot of very powerful things I think they may connect with. And by the end, she says something brilliant, which is just, it's really, that episode is really about marriage told through the lens of entrepreneurship. And I can't tell you how much good feedback I get from folks going, my boyfriend, my husband, my wife hated what I did, but I played her that episode and They still hate it, but at least they don't feel so alone anymore. So I wish I had good advice about parents. My dad still jokes that I play in Monopoly money, so I haven't quite got his buy-in yet, but he goes,
but hold on. He's not wrong. Yeah. He's actually not wrong. If you think about what, is actually constitutes money. So he's kind of right about that. But at the same time, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that today your spouse at least is a little bit, now she probably likes some of the benefits that come from from what you've done. But I have the question, because I know a number of people do. Now, knowing what you know today, why mobile home parks?
It matches my skill set like a glove.
Okay.
And my wife hates this, but I got to say it. When I met her, we moved in together within 3 months of knowing each other. We were engaged within 18, and we've been so happy. We've been together for almost 10 years now. We were so happy. I knew very quickly that she was the one. It did not take very long at all. Everything made sense. There was just this clarity about it. It was the same thing with mobile home parks. You understand why she would hate that.
Yeah, I would not. Yeah, being compared to a mobile home park, probably not high on her list. I get it.
Reverting back to why it made sense for me, my skill set, I love operations. My concentration in my MBA was operations. I love organizing things.
That explains it.
I love selling and persuading. I love presenting, talking to people, speaking Spanish, learning marketing. My dad's a marketing professor, so I got that itch in me. I love speaking to people face to face. I don't mind confrontation. I don't mind dumping tons of hours into something. And most importantly, I love helping people. From an early age, I discovered that I really wanted to make a difference in education. Because I was ADHD growing up, and I was a nightmare of a kid. And I realized early on that because my parents had the patience and the money to get me the treatment I needed and had the patience to make sure I got my education, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's, again, why I tried to thank my dad. But I realized that there are people like me out there that did not have parents like I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been able to do through my business is start a scholarship. So it's not a full scholarship yet. It's a partial scholarship, and we're going to build it out over the years. But to wake up every day when I have a bad day and know that I am helping kids go to school and afford the ability to go to school, that to me helps me wake up every single morning. And I couldn't do that in self-storage to the same degree, right? Or retail or somewhere else. It had to be affordable housing.
Okay, hold on. I know someone's listening right now, and if they had the opportunity, there was like a record scratch that just wanted. And they're like, "What do you mean? Why couldn't you do that with self storage? They make money. Why couldn't you do that with a different real estate strategy? What is it that you're specifically saying that mobile home parks allows you to do this that another strategy does not?"
Sure. To be fair, yes, you could start a scholarship fund, but it's different when you're meeting people face to face, where you're speaking your broken Spanish to them. When you're on the property shaking their hand when they go, the last guy lived in New York City and never came down here. Mm-hmm. You, the owner of this property, are talking to me face to face. We also, by the way, partner up with PayLease, and if they pay online and they opt in, every time they pay online, it adds a positive note to their credit. So in other words, I can look someone in the face and go, I'm going to keep the crime out. I'm going to keep this place safe. If you pay online, I'm going to help you build your credit, and I'm going to send your kids to college. All of that above that package is me making a difference within affordable housing. I could probably do the same thing in Section 8 or other realms of affordable housing, but when it comes to things like self-storage or retail, sure, I could do all of those things, but it's the value add that I bring to my ultimate customers, which are my tenants. Mm-hmm. It just fits like a glove.
Agreed. And that's the part that I wanted to make sure that people heard, because that was the thing for me when we were primarily focused on affordable housing, et cetera, is being able to know that I was affecting the quality of life and allowing and enabling moms specifically and parents in general to be near the right school and not have to stress about will the AC work and will the heat work, or will it be safe, and do these guys care? And I like exactly that part of the story, because oftentimes when people are talking about mobile home parks, the only thing they have to say is, oh, it's easy, it's a cash cow, and you don't have to do anything. And I think you represent a completely different side of that.
Couldn't agree more. I just got sick of the hype. That's mobile home parks in real life. I want people to get into this industry. I do. I want people like me to come in, start scholarships, help people financially as well, while being firm. It's not a charity. I'm not a non-for-profit, while being firm, but coming in understanding that your customer are not your investors, which I think a lot of people have wrong, especially if you have a fund. You have that pressure to place capital and you forget who your customer is, which is, if your residents are not paying, your investors are not happy. You make your investors happy with strong returns, and that comes from pumping your properties full of value. And that's not just improving the property, but not being afraid to shake people's hands face to face. And that's my big thing, because I've seen in the 4 years I've been doing mobile home parks, a lot of people rushing in from these big funds. I mean, John Oliver just had an episode where he roasted folks for doing exactly that. They go and take this training course and they think it's a coupon clipper. And, who pays at the end of the day for that? The tenants.
Yeah. All the time. Now, I'm curious, though, when it comes down to it today, knowing everything that you know, experiencing what you have experienced, when you look out into the future, and specifically given this current economic climate, what does the future for mobile home parks or real estate look like to you?
I think that while the economy is hot and equities are completely overpriced right now, the kind of sexy thing to do is invest in real estate. So Deutsche Bank just came out with a great write-up, and then this other company, and I'm going to forget it now, had an outstanding write-up on Q1 2019, where they basically said that, in so many words, cap rates have dropped by about 3%, just completely compressed over the last 2 decades. And money is just piling into non-major markets, most likely because the major markets, the New York Cities, the Dallas-Fort Worth, even Charlotte, North Carolinas, the investor cash is just poured in like crazy. It's compressed the cap rates. It's pushing out the little guy. People like me, who I only own 8 mobile home parks as of this recording. So I think the future is going to change. And I think a lot of the mom and pop idea, so the mobile home park craze came from this idea that mobile home parks were owned largely by baby boomers who are looking to retire and selling their properties for 10 caps. And you come in, you raise the rents, pass through the utilities, and it's a coupon clipper. And although that may have been true for a long time, it's definitely not true anymore. There's a lot of institutional capital coming in. So I think what's going on in my little niche is probably true for the greater macro real estate trend, which is when the equity markets are insanely inflated right now and interest rates are extremely low, relatively speaking. Where else are you going to put your money? And if it's not going to be the stock market, why not real estate? And if now everybody in the world wants real estate, then the price goes through the roof. And if debt is still really attractive, it's going to overinflate prices. So what I think is going to happen likely is interest rates are going to climb back up, meaning prices, cap rates will be a little bit more favorable to buyers. And also, I think a lot of people are new entrants within the industry. And my fear is that folks are going to come into a niche like mine with the expectation that it's a coupon clipper with outstanding returns, to find out that they overpaid for something because they got sold on an idea. And so the returns aren't so great, and they don't really know how to operate it. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to see a lot of REO properties. You're going to see a lot of people going, you know what, opportunity zones were great for the balance sheet. Same thing with the accelerated depreciation. So from a big institutional standpoint, it really makes sense to buy these. But here's the thing, who pays for that at the end of the day? When things aren't going well, you cut costs and you raise revenues. Those are your two biggest levers. And who pays for that? The tenants. So
Yeah.
I'm terrified for these tenants where I mean, that's the whole episode of John Oliver came out talking about was this company raised rents an absurd amount and gave people like 30 days to move their homes. And it costs like 5 to 10 grand to move a mobile home.
Yeah.
And where are you going to put it if you can't buy land? If you're having to rent land from someone, you're basically a captive audience. So my big thing is I want people to come into my industry. I want people to come into real estate, but I really hope it's not, well, hey, this sounds like a sexy, cool thing to do to make money. I really hope it comes from a genuine, like from the heart reason to get in, to make money and to make your residents better off. But, I have my fears about what's going to happen in the market, not just in mobile home parks, but in apartment complexes too. I live in Charlotte, and it seems like every block there's a new Class A apartment complex going up.
Yeah.
So I have my fears.
I got that, and I agree with you about Charlotte. I was just out there a little bit ago. Now, for those that have listened this far and want to find out more about what you got going on, what's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
My website's the easiest way to do it. So my name is Ryan Narus. It's Narus. My company is Archimedes Group. That's Archimedes. I was unlucky. I couldn't get archimedesgroup.com. So I got archimedesgrp.com. Real easy. If you just Google Ryan Narus, our website is the first thing to come up. All my contact information's there. Just drop me a line. I would love to meet you regardless of what you're going into, self-storage, home flipping. Some of the best advice I ever got was from a home flipper who had only done 3 in his life. So a lot of folks are like, oh, Ryan, thanks for taking my call. Thanks for, I've never bought anything before. What can I do for you? And I always say, don't worry about what you can do for me. If we know each other for 10 years, I'm sure at some point in time I'll reach out to you with something. And even if I don't, I am so happy to help you. So please don't be afraid to reach out to me. Don't be intimidated. Google me, pull me up on my website, drop me a line. My links to my podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, is right there on my website, including all the videos I do. I do a bunch of like quick 30-second to 90-second videos, just quick tips. Anything I can do to help, please drop me a line. I would love to connect.
Excellent. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you, because I'm curious to hear your answer given everything that you've gone through to get to where you are. Because I know there's a number of people who have listened, and they probably have been through, various hype cycles and thought about, man, I could do this or that, and the other, or they're at their job or on their way to their job. Literally right now, as you and I are listening, or coming home, wishing they didn't have to go back. But in the process of listening to us, they're like, you know what? That's it. I'm done. Today's the day. They're drawing that proverbial line in the sand, and they're at what I like to call the precipice of decision. Now, like I know, when we get to that precipice, oftentimes we have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds us, usually, oh my God, you're going to do what? Real estate? Mobile home parks? Really? Don't you know who lives in a mobile home park? Or what are you thinking? Or some people are related to that voice. Now, my question is as follows. Let's pretend that this time, today, it's going to be different. This time, they're actually going to follow through. They're going to do exactly what you suggest, and they're going to do it in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
4 things. You're going to self-assess because you need to know what you love. You're going to learn, you're going to network, and you're going to sacrifice. And you're going to do it a lot. And you're going to have patience because it's not going to happen overnight. I started reading books, 50 books a year, 2012. I didn't go full time in my business until 2017. So it took 5 years to get to that point. And that's not even fair because I didn't really start in 2012. I started as a child learning and developing skills. So it's not going to happen quick. But basically how it's going to go is, number one, you're going to discover who you are, the self-assessment piece. Because like I mentioned earlier in the interview, if you don't love it, you are going to hit a random hurdle and you're going to quit. And then once you kind of discover who you are, then start looking by learning, by networking. Learn, network, repeat. Read books, talk to people, learn, help connect people. Through that process, you're going to slowly discover. I must have gone through over 100 businesses when I realized I was an entrepreneur at heart. It took time to find mobile home parks. And when I found mobile home parks, it took another 2 years basically to go full time in it. So once you identify your dream business, whatever that is, so let's say that this precipice that we're at, you've already done that. The one thing that you've got to do is sacrifice. You have to be able to have the courage to bet big on yourself. And that may be something like what I did. I literally realized that I had to take a huge pay cut. I literally went and lived in a mobile home for 14 months. My wife hated it. I was going back and forth between Atlanta and Charlotte every other week. Week in Atlanta, week in Charlotte for 14 months. Wife livid. Like, you're cutting out this bank job you have that's extremely stable to take basically less than half to go and live on a blow-up mattress in a stinky trailer park. That kind of sacrifice got me to where I am. Because if anybody is an Austin Powers fan here, one of my favorite lines from one of the movies was from the fat bad guy who said, "I'm unhappy because I eat, and I eat because I'm unhappy." I sat down with this mobile home flipper who I mentioned earlier, only did 3 deals. That was it. And he told me, "I want to do this full time. It's my dream. This is it." And I said, "Well, what's stopping you?" And he basically hit me with that Austin Powers line. He said, "I can't go full time because I don't have enough deals. And I don't have enough deals because I'm not full time." And that moment just was a game changer for me because I realized what I had done, which is I found a way to get full time. Because once you're just full time looking for deals, all of a sudden you'll find they're everywhere, even in a hot market. That's not an excuse. If you jump on LoopNet once a week for an hour versus you do what I do, I cold call to owners at a minimum of an hour a day. And there's 2 of me because I got a business partner. Not to mention I go and hang out with them and I do all this stuff and I talk to brokers as well. Putting a full-time effort into finding deals has allowed me to find more deals. So even though I basically took a huge haircut on my salary and went and literally slept in a mobile home for 14 months, by the end of that 14 months, I had gone from basically owning 3 mobile home parks to now I own 8. In a very short period of time because I broke out of that Austin Powers excuse loop. So if you're listening in and you've already discovered whatever your opportunity is, you've already learned and networked, you've identified that, you're at that precipice, the next step is to sacrifice and to bet big on yourself. Because what I said to that mobile home flipper is I said, if time is the only factor keeping you from finding more deals, who's to say you couldn't quit your job, live in one of your flips, cut your expenses down big time, and just give yourself 12 months? Because when you're 80 years old, looking back at your early 30s, are you going to go, "Wow, I'm glad I stayed at my job"? Or are you going to go, "You know what? I gave myself 12 months. I fell flat on my face, but I am so proud I did that. I learned so much. I got out of a job I hated and I found this other great opportunity. And even though my dream didn't work out, I found this other thing that was infinitely better than that job I hated."
Yeah, I get you. No, I get you 100%. And I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share that with us today. And because there's a lot of people who just, they're right there. And maybe something we said can help them get over the edge. And I just want to be the first to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, wisdom, and insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Oh, I'm honored. Like I said, your podcast is incredible. A lot of these real estate folks kind of have the same people coming on and say the same thing. You are a fantastic interviewer, and I'm a huge fan of you. So it's been a very big honor to be a part of this. So thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. You know, it's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Well, today that means look up Ryan. Why? Because he literally is asking you to look him up, talk to him, have some of those phone calls. Maybe you'll say something transformative, and so will he. And at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats. And ladies and gentlemen, your boat won't get lifted until you put it in the ocean. So make it happen, because you can, because you should. And even if it's only because you want to. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.